There. May I please have everyone's attention? A meeting of the Upson Historical Society is now called to order. On behalf of the society, we want to welcome everyone to the meeting and the program. Do we have any visitors here? Have any visitors, please raise your hand so we can recognize you. You can introduce yourself. We'll start right back here.
I'm Stephen Hammock. I'm here with my dad, Aubrey Hammock from Macon. He's from Thomaston.
Okay. And who is this next to you? That's your dad.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anybody else that's a visitor? That will admit it. Okay. No other visitors? Well, I want to extend an invitation to everybody here who's not a member to join our society. Get the newsletter, activities. We have applications on the back table back here, and we also accept donations from the society at the back table. We also have books and several other things on the back table. We have DVDs of our past programs are available, but we're now also on YouTube. And I learned how to do this myself even. You can go to YouTube and type in Upson Historical Society and you can see all sorts of good things on there. Does anyone have any special announcements that need to have made? Nobody's got any special announcements or anything to say? Okay. At the April meeting, we're going to have the election of officers for the Historical Societies for a 2-year term. If you are going to nominate anyone for an office in this election, be sure you have talked to them in advance. They understand exactly what's involved and they are willing to serve. I notice I got some laughs on that. Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be brought up before the program? Nobody's got anything to say. Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Gary Gill, and he will introduce the program speaker.
Hello everyone. I'm glad we got a good crowd here. I think that speaks well for Mr. Wesley. Let's see, let me see a show of hands of everybody that Mr. Brown, he's cut your hair. Let me see a show of hands. Look at that. Isn't that something? All right, well, my job is to introduce Wesley Brown. You know, that you don't really need to do that around here, but I will. Mr. Brown grew up in Meansville. Started his career by helping his father cut hair at the Georgia Baptist Children's Home in Pike County. After beginning his career in Thomaston, he served in many roles with various organizations in the community, including Kiwanis and Key Clubs, Upson Booster Club, and is past master of the East Thomaston Masonic Lodge. When Brown gave his first haircut, he was the youngest Master Barber in the state of Georgia. In 2003, he was presented with the George F. Hixson Fellowship Award, one of Kiwanis International Foundation's highest honors. And with that, I've got this one last thing here. It says in 2003, and some of y'all may have seen this in the paper back then, and you may have seen it on our website last week. In January of 2003, it said Wesley Brown wraps up the 48th year of his career cutting the hair of George Gill, my father. Gill was Brown's first customer when he started his career as a barber. I remember Daddy telling me right after that haircut, commemorating the 48 years, that he paid you 50 cents which is what he paid you back in what was it? 1940? 1955. So if you want a 50-cent haircut these days you got to find some kind of sentimental reason for it. Find you a barber who started his career 50 years earlier. But Mr. Brown, we're glad to have you. I'm looking forward to it.
Good evening. It's such a great joy to be honored by the Upson Historical Society once again, because we worked real hard several years ago, and this society got a great move going. We have some real hard-working people now. So if you're not a member, please join tonight. I just saw a new book back there that I didn't have. You need to buy a book or two every time you come till you get them all, because we need the money. I got to tell you this. Notice we got a couple of lawyers in the audience. Do any of y'all remember Colonel James Davis, a local attorney here many years ago? Well, he was on the committee with the Chamber of Commerce that purchased the land to build the box factory west of Thomaston out here, and that's been many, many years ago. But he worked real hard. He was a real hard worker, and he had just worked himself completely to death. So he decided, he sold the land, they got him coming, I'm going fishing. So he gets his old truck out, backs up, hooks up to his boat, goes down to the river, puts it in, fishes for about 4 or 5 hours, and hadn't caught anything. So he goes to crank his motor, and it won't crank. And he worries, and he worries, and he sits there, and he sweats, and he doesn't know what to do. So finally, this big boat come up the river with 2 big motors on it, 2 big strong men, one on the front, one on the back, and it had a big wooden box, 4 feet high, 4 feet wide. They stopped and said, "Good buddy, can we give you help?" He said, "Yeah, if you will, carry me to the, where I left my car up at the ramp." They said, "Hop on." And so while he was getting on the boat, they noticed they were hooking his boat up to theirs. So they went on up the river, and Colonel Davis was sitting up on top of that box. And when he got up there, he saw this truck. It said, "Georgia Revenue Department." So they pulled up, and the revenue man said, "This is the first time we've ever come to arrest a bootlegger that had his lawyer with him." Okay. I would like to share some of my 66 years of cutting hair in Thomaston, Georgia, barbering, and as Gary alluded to, some community service. We may just exempt that community service because pretty much everybody knows me, and they know I don't get nothing done but I run all the time, because we need to find some information from you here tonight. What I would love for us to do is wind this meeting up like a real true barbershop, because everybody that goes in the house, you lay something down. I won't ask you where you lay it down, but you know. So everybody that comes to the barbershop, they lay something down, some kind of conversation, some kind of junk. So, you know, we need to create a kind of a community barbershop here tonight. But like Mr. Gary Gill said, I have to admire him and compliment him. He taught for 33 years. He was the Key Club sponsor for 33 years for the Thomaston Kiwanis Club. He never got a penny for it. You know, they pay coaches, they pay people to do everything at school. But Mr. Gary, he did that. To move on to his daddy, Mr. George Gill, he was a very illustrious gentleman. I thought the world of him. He came in the shop that morning. It was a Saturday morning, about 7:30. The sun was shining. I was happy as I could be. It was my first job. I was raised up in the country, so here I was downtown Thomaston in Hotel Upson. You know, I had a ride. And he came in, and I cut his hair. And I noticed he was kind of twitching. And when he got out of the chair, he said, well, son, he said, I won't be back no time soon. Said, you cut all my hair off. Well, let me do a little partial introduction. I am Wesley Brown. I grew up on a farm in Meansville, Georgia, halfway between Meansville and Mountain Gap Church. And I have 4 siblings. I'm the Swain kid. I have 2, or the Hinge kid. I have 2, a brother and sister older than me and a brother and sister younger than me. So I got to know all of we 5 children, and that's it, my baby sister right there, and her husband. And she knows that I was fortunate enough. You know, you don't think about that much, but in a big family, the older child and the younger child, the older child is a mother to the baby of the younger child, and the baby looks at the older child as a mother. So, you know, being a barber, you learn all these things by people bring something in and lay it on the table, you know. We learned a lot in life. We had a wonderful mother. Then I came to Thomaston and I met Gwen Curry, and we got married in 1957. We have 2 children, Dr. Johnny Brown, and he has 3 boys, and Lynn Brown Shaver, and she just came in, and she has 4 children, and she works for RISA, and she is in charge of workplace learning for Lamar County and Upson County, and she stays busy. Now, I have to say this about Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill was a hard worker. When I cut his hair, he worked for the Henry Poultry Company, which was located on the corner of Mowry and South Center Street. They dressed chickens, and he sold them. He was a salesman that sold fries to the local stores to sell on the weekend. And I won't ever forget, he said he had toted as much crushed ice as he could ever tote in his life, because they didn't have that much refrigeration in '55, but you know, everything had to be stored in crushed ice. It was just constantly coming in and going out. But he went to work after that at the Moth Mill. He did a great job. He moved up to one of the top echelons. And I remember the night, several of you do, that Mr. Hollis Smith, the voice of the R.E. Lee Rebels, had a heart attack while he was announcing the game. They came, got him out of the booth, got him down, put him in an ambulance, and Mr. George Gill stepped in his seat, and he was the voice of the R.E. Lee Rebels for many, many years. In fact, there's a couple of interesting things about it. He would be in Europe, or he would be somewhere during the week working for Martha Mill, and he would get an early flight, come in, and Merle Greathouse would go to the airport, pick him up at 6:30, and have him at football field at 8 o'clock. He'd carry a driver to drive Mr. Gill's car back, because he would come in with a siren wide open. George was a very talented person. Have to tell you another little story. Growing up in Meansville and Mountain Gap is one of the finest Christian communities you could ever live in. We went to church. That was our entertainment, and that was our job. The preacher got through preaching one Sunday morning, and he said, we're going to meet at 3 o'clock this afternoon and pray for rain. All the farmers was down and out. You know, it hadn't rained. See, a farmer don't get a paycheck but once a year. And when the crop dies, then your paycheck's gone for that year, and you have to wait for another year. So, you know, Daddy and all the farmers, they got there early. We got there about 1:45, and here comes Mr. Wes Mathis bringing his mother-in-law. And they drive up in the old pickup truck, and she gets out and has her parasol. Today they call them umbrellas. We little old boys and running around there playing, we got to snicking. We were just having a good time. She looked just straight at us, and she said, I came to pray for rain, boys. You know, within a couple of days it rained, so I believed in prayer ever since then. That was a great lesson. So I've had a chance to learn a lot of lessons. Now, I'm have poor eyesight, I have a poor mind, I have a poor voice, so if I make a mistake, it's just poor. That's the only way I look at it. I have developed a love for Thomaston, Georgia, and Upson County. I don't really think there's anybody that I see that I don't like. But now, you can teach me not to like it. So, in working in Thomaston has been great. Let's mention a little bit about history of barbering. Barbering really started when Moses was wandering around in the wilderness with the Egyptian slaves, because anybody that had leprosy, they would shave them and use a little camel oil on the skin. And so that was the first known, when I did a history of barbering, that was the first known of shaving that I found. Now, in approximately 5,000 BC, the Egyptians started shaving. I'm glad I didn't come along then, because they sharpened flint stones and seashells, and that's what they used to shave people with. But as time come on, the Egyptians perfected it, and they finally started making tools, and shaving become a very outstanding thing, because even today, or yesterday in '55 when I started to work, there was 28 barbers in Upson County. There wasn't but 2 barbers that were noted for being able to shave customers, because that is one of the greatest talents you could ever have, is learning how to shave a person. And then prior to shaving, sharpening the razor, because that's the shaving. That's why I have such great appreciation for those artisans that sharpen flints and shells to shave back in the earlier days. The Egyptian civilization took to shaving and barbering and developing hairstyles, and that went on and made barbering a very legal and a very popular profession. Different people, different aristocrats, different leaders, they had their own personal barber. They had their own personal shaver. He was carried in their attaché. Wherever they went, he went and shaved them. Another real time when shaving was promoted was Alexander the Great, when he was fighting the Persian army. His soldiers kept coming in and they killed us. They grabbed us by the beard, pulled us down, and stuck at daggers. So he put out a referendum that every soldier had to be shaved every day. So Alexander the Great started the first mass shaving process there ever was, because he demanded that his soldiers be shaved so you couldn't grab the beard and pull them down and murder them. Then along about 1000 AD, barbering assumed the barber surgeon category. You know, the barber took care of all the things that come along in the community. He was a very involved person in the community. He was apparently very skilled. And then they got into the practice of bloodletting, and that was very important. That lasted on for many, many years until in London in 1745. They ruled the knowledge in the country, history. We had really gained a lot of information, and the medical society felt like the barbers was encroaching on them. So they went before the law, and the barbers conceded not to do any more bloodletting, but we retained as a trade-off the symbol of barbering, which is the barber pole. Barber pole has nothing to do with barbering. It has to do with bloodletting and the medical field. But as a legal option there, we picked up the barber pole, and I get a kick out of it every time I see it. I see one occasionally. It's that is put up and it's mounted backwards. And it just, just tickled me to death. We all know that it has the red stripe, the white stripe, and the blue stripe, and the basin at the bottom. The red stripe represents the blood that they drained out of the individual. The white stripe represents the bandage which they repaired the incision and took care of all the little rashes and things and put the camel oil on it and patched it, and it represents the package. The blue represents the veins in your body, and the basin represents where you collect the blood. Well, a true mounted barber pole, the red stripe always runs down because blood will flow, gravity will let it flow to the basin. And so that's why, but I have been and seen them with a red pole where they were running and the red stripe was going up. But it made a great thing for us to, as a society, to be able to know and identify the barbershops. I don't have one at my shop because I don't really consider myself a barber. I consider myself just a community activist talker. As I stated earlier, when I started barbering in January the 20th, 1955, there was 8 barbershops in Thomaston, Georgia, and there was 28 barbers. So it didn't take me long to figure out that I wasn't going to make a living. My first paycheck was $16 after taxes and everything had come out. So that was poor. So I realized I had to do something. So I didn't have any work to do mostly, most of the work then was weekend work. So I started going to coffee clubs. And I don't know whether we have any coffee club people here or not tonight, but that was one of the greatest things that I have participated in my life. And I could go to the Blue Goose Cafe at 11:15, and I would go early enough that I would catch the coffee club. They left at 11:45 because the cafe had to serve the 12 o'clock people, so they would kick the coffee club out. They just tell them to leave, just complain, and they would leave. But I met some of the most nicest, most wonderful, most knowledgeable people ever. And let me tell you right now, Thomaston has enjoyed a lot of success, although we lost the textile industry. But that wasn't the doing of the Thomaston people. That was the doing of your politician and my politician. But these men, they were very astute. They thought very deeply. And it was just a joy to be around them. I won't ever forget. I know y'all remember Owen Miller. I believe Mr. Granger just alluded to him in his article this week in Thomaston Times. Owen Miller was there every day. And Shad Coswell, who was part owner of WSFT and part owner of Thomaston Times, and a silent owner and a great community man. And they kept something going all the time. I will never forget one day, Olin Miller come in with just one sheet of paper. And he had a few things written on it. And he said, "Shad, I got you a math problem." And I didn't know at the time, but Shad Coswell was probably as great a math person that ever walked on the streets in Thomaston, Georgia. He came back in about 3 weeks, and he had a group of papers about like that. In fact, there were 8 or 9. He said, "Olin, I finally worked that problem." And of course, we discussed it, and it was a very detailed problem, but they would challenge one another. In other words, they had a lot of fun, they did a lot of joking, but they would challenge each other's mentality in a minute. And that was at the Blue Goose. Okay, and then I would go over to Thomaston Cafe, the one that Johnny Caldwell owned. The off day, I'd go one day to one and one day to the next one, because people that go to a coffee club, they never go but nowhere to their coffee club. They don't go and share a second coffee club. They're loyal to their group. And so I learned a lot over there. And in making friends, I finally became building a business. But really what put my business together and what made me, if I've ever had any success, was with the high schools. You know, I started in January and we were still playing a little basketball, not much. And I went to Yatesville, and I was watching the boys and girls, and they was having fun. Gwen's mother and father moved out to Yatesville after we married, and I would carry her out there, and she'd visit with her mother and father, and I'd go to the Yatesville ball game. And I hit this idea. I said, you know, if I get the star of the basketball team and give him a haircut, he's going to promote me. So I got real busy and started giving haircuts away to these people. You didn't have to score but 5 points, and I'd give you a haircut. Next thing I knew, I had people walking in the door, people coming in and out, getting a haircut. Well, they were bringing the buddy, and then at Lee, we had a boy by the name of Marvin Fordham. Most of y'all know him. He was excellent, so I started giving him haircuts. And it was not long before I had a good drawing out of the Lee School. So it wasn't long before football started. The summer passed. Well, I come up with a way to give haircuts to the person that made the best block, the best tackle, the touchdown, caught the pass. You know, I really materialized that. And it wasn't long before I had a real good business. And everything was going good. And then the style started to change. You know, it's like every business you go into, the minute you accomplish something, you're fighting another battle. So when I started, everybody was wearing the World War II style. See, you know, you'd be on bivouac, there was no running water, you couldn't take a bath, and they'd build a fire, and they'd put the iron pot on top of it, and pour some water in it, and heat the water and shave. And so the World War II haircut was, you skin it up the side and the back, and you leave enough on top to brush one way or the other, or you give them a GI, you know, and that's it, because it was a hygiene problem too for those men. They couldn't bathe every day. And so it didn't take me long to cut one day and make a mistake. And I picked up the clippers and went across the top of the head, and just as flat. And all of a sudden, we started doing flat tops. And man, it was wonderful. I tell you right now, I could do them in 2-3 minutes just like that, you know? And it was just I don't know, a gift from heaven. Gift from God. But then you had the bad side to that. Somebody'd come in now, and they'd have real fine hair, and they'd want a flat top like the guy that had real coarse hair. Well, real fine hair won't do nothing, just lay to your head. You can't do anything. So we got to using butch wax, buying everything we could. We would use alum, put water on the hair and slide alum blocks across there, put heat on it and stand it up, and then the time they'd get out, and we didn't have air conditioning at the hotel. So by the time they went to the pool room, shot 2 or 3 games of pool, they'd be down the aisle. But it worked out, and we did a good job with it. And then all of a sudden, they had this big brass thing that showed up TV. And Ed Sullivan was on there, and he had 4 British boys on there. I'm telling you. Now, that caused more family trouble than you could ever shake a stick at. It was called the Beatles. And every boy wanted to let his hair grow out. They had no use for a barber. And I was sitting there with all these young boys as my trade, you know. So I had to just tell them, listen, just let me wash your hair. I had to get busy, I tell you. Nobody wanted a haircut. And, but we were saved. Along about that time, the men started wanting to wear a nice coiffured hairstyle. And then that brought in European razor cutting, brought in the hair dryer, brought in washing in the shop, and that was we were saved again. It was just like manna from heaven dropped down on us, you know. And by the time we got into that, then I had a good many customers that wanted a hairpiece, so I got in the hairpiece business. But right now, I don't know what the hairstyle is. I'll be honest with you. The women are wearing the hair like the men used to, and the men are wearing ponytails. So I can't figure it out. Now, I want some questions, and I think this would be a good time. Does anybody have a question? Yes, ma'am.
How many mohawks did you ever do?
We did quite a few, because I was in the Guards for 11 years. and they made us get our hair cut. And I hate to tell it like it is, but I'll tell it straight to you. We went off on the weekend, and we had 4 or 5 boys that got drunk. So that was not unusual, but then I always had a pair of clippers. I don't know why I always had a pair of clippers. So they come up with wanting a mohawk. So, you know, I gave about 3 mohawks that day, and we got back, and lo and behold, the little fellas started getting mohawks. And that became real popular, and Mama liked it because it was hard to get all them rat tails out of them little boys' hair and this, that, and wash it. Do we have another question?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Besides anybody in your family, have you ever cut a woman's hair?
Yeah, I didn't like to, but I cut 2. I cut Nancy Holloway's hair, who married Nancy Walter, Travis Walter. I cut her hair, and I cut the preacher at Twin Oaks hair when I opened up the new shop on East Lee Street, and Gwen was in there next door. I cut those 2, and I decided I didn't want any of that business whatsoever. The only problem, and I'll tell this on my wife, she'll shoot me when I get home, a woman never knows when her hair's fixed. When we lived in town, in other words, it took us 5 minutes to get from our house to Hightower Methodist Church when our children was real small, and my wife was always ready to go and get to church by 11 o'clock. Didn't matter when she started, so we had a peace tree. I bought an old piece of the junk of a truck, and I went in my truck, and she went in the car, and that saved our marriage. Do we have another question?
What did it mean when, back in like the 70s, when guys wanted their hair long, but the ROTC made them keep it cut? Did you have to, guys, would they come in, because I remember doing it, they come in and tell you to give them a cut that'll pass ROTC inspection?
Yeah, the rule was you can't touch your ears, your collar, or your eyebrows. You know, it was real simple. Wasn't hard for a barber to figure that out. And I'd get there about 7 o'clock at the hotel, and I had to be at school at 7:45, and I'd cut about 3 or 4. But when it got confused, when they started letting it grow out, boys learned how to take Vitalis, and I worked with them. I would cut a real outline around the ears and cut it up in the back, and they'd take that Vitalis and they would sweep this hair back and then put the military cap on it, and we got caught. And this young boy that sung in the First Baptist, he sung special for the First Baptist Church, and oh, he was had a beautiful head of hair, and he had that down to a science. And he got up and sung that special on Sunday morning at First Baptist Church, and he'd let his hair come down. It was at the bottom of his ears, and it was down on his collar. And you know, there's always a smarty in the crowd. Mr. McGuire asked him, "Son, I thought you was taking military after church." So we cut his hair off the next day. But they could figure it out. I even got in the wig business. I had a group of boys that had a little band, Greg Wilson, and he brought them all over there. We ordered 8 or 9 wigs, and you know, they'd get a military haircut for school, and then they'd go to play the music and all, and they'd put the wig on. You know, I just had a wonderful career. I mean, you know, it's something fun going on all the time. And you always got to look at a situation. Never forget this. There's always a fun side, and there's always a worry side. Choose the fun side. I guarantee you'll live longer. I think I represent that pretty good. I'll be 85 in April. And I always look for the fun side. We need to laugh. You need to laugh. I've had a pretty good community program. Gary alluded to that. You have to be careful if you ask me to join your group, because I'll go to work and put somebody else to work. I was in the Guards for 11 years. That was good for my business. I was in the Masonic Order, and I worked all the way through the chairs and came to work for Master, but I had a great break. The guy ahead of me worked at Warner Robins, so I got to be the worst for Master for 2 years. I made all the Masonic funerals for 2 years. I could get off for an hour or two and go to a funeral. He couldn't drive from Warren Robins back. So he would call me, and it let me have a great year's of work for Master because I had a lot of practice the year before. Then, you know, I was always involved in everything, and I didn't like the way the things the city was doing, so I ran for city council and got elected. But now I turned that job back down. I kept it one term, and I gave it back to her. I'm gonna tell you right now. But Mr. Baxter was the city manager at the time, and we'd get on something, and he was he's a tough old guy. You know, he created mailboxes, you know, like a rabbit hole for all of us, and whatever ordinance we were going to be discussing at that meeting night, we'd go over it in the morning at 7 o'clock and we'd read those ordinances so we could be aware of what the present ordinance was, you know. And Bobby Smith, Coach Bobby Smith got elected the same year I got elected. And every now and then he was real kind. He'd give us a sit down and go over the city budget. He'd go over it in detail. It'd take from 2 to 2 hours and a half. I mean, he would cover every line in that budget so we would know. And I really appreciated that. He knew how to treat a young, inexperienced city councilman. He wanted him prepared when he come to his meeting. And I enjoyed that. Then I was in the Upson Booster Club, and we had, when we consolidated, nobody wanted to do anything. We had the Lee people over here and the Upson people over here, so I jumped in the Booster Club, and we created, it was a Lee Touchdown Club and the Upson County Touchdown Club, so we changed it to the Booster Club. So we had a very successful about 6-7 years, and after about my life is about 6 years in whatever I'm doing. The Bible is written on a 7-year pattern, but I'm a 6-year pattern. Then I was in the Kiwanis Club, and all of these clubs allowed me to be their president. They would humble me because I really figured it out somewhere down the way. If you would work, they would work you. And that's what it meant, you know, that's all it meant. But my pride and joy of Upson County is Upson Historical Society. I sure do miss my sidekick, and I know y'all do too, Gary Self. When I was elected president of the Historical Society, I will never forget it. I had just done a program for the Thomaston Kiwanis Club on our Pancake Day. And David Piper, if you ever want to hear something interesting, turn to Fund 101, 6:30 Sunday morning, and he plays what he considers the best club speak of the week. So you can hear somebody speaking in Thomaston, Georgia about something at 6:30 every Sunday morning at Fund 101. And Gary walked into my shop Monday morning, as soon as I opened up. He said, Wesley said, how do I join the Upson Society? I said, just go back up there to the building and tell them you want an annual membership. I mean, a yearly membership. He said, why? I said, I just want to join for you. I said, no, Gary, you want to join for life. So about 30 minutes, he come back and had his lifetime membership. And he took over the vice president. And he worked, he got programs. I'm going to tell you, he really and truly knew people. He was a very intelligent man. You couldn't pull nothing on Gary. He might walk off and leave you, but you didn't pull anything on him. And we had 4 or 5 very, of course, Penny was here at that time, and we had 4 or 5 greatly successful years. But you've got a good crew now. But that was a lot of work. But I kept knowing what do we need to do for the Upson Historical Society to get everybody's attention. I didn't just want people that had an interest of history. I wanted everybody's attention. So we came up with Let's Honor Mattie Lou Pollard, who won the National Spelling Bee in 1947. So we started planning that. It took us about a year to plan that because nobody that we needed to honor her besides the club, they all lived, some of them lived as far as California, Massachusetts, and we were kind of dead set that if we honored Mattie Lou, we wanted all our children here. So we realized right away that was going to take some money. We were going to have to, the club was going to have to come up with tickets to have these children come here from these distances. But, you know, we had a private donor that made it happen, and we brought her in here and had a real nice thing here in the Upson, a nice meal. Pastor Dunabell catered for us. But can you imagine being 12 years old and being standing in New York and in a spelling bee? You think about that a little bit. Now, Ms. Phillips was her teacher at Upson County Roland School, and she was in the 6th grade. But why I start off that way, she won the state. Mattie Lou won the state in 1946. She won the Upson County Spelling Bee, she won the state of Georgia Spelling Bee, and went to New York and came in the last tier of spellers for the national champion. And then in 1947, Ms. Phillips turned around and coached her for a full year, and she could do it because her husband was the sawer for Elliott Lumber Company, and they happened to be cutting a tract of timber in Soperton, Georgia. And he would leave and be gone 2 weeks at a time, and Mattie Lou would come home with Ms. Phillips, and Ms. Phillips would coach her 2 or 3 hours every day, 5 days a week. And that's how much effort she put in it. But when she was 13 years old, and in the 7th grade, she won the state. She went to Washington, D.C. and walked away with the honors. Now, we've done a lot of things in sports. We've done a lot of things in Leon Newman at First Baptist Church. We've won the state solo. We've won the state quartet. We've won the state trio. I could just keep, I love school. Y'all probably beginning to realize that by now. You know, it's just a type thing that so many people have worked so hard and never got any credit. The paper don't even carry. You know, you don't even read about it. That's what kind of bothers me a little bit. That's why I told you the story about Colonel Davis, you know, because that story didn't make the paper, you know. And you was waiting on him when you got there. But can you just imagine a 13-year-old girl? But as I've stated before in other programs, there was cars all the way bumper to bumper to the Pike County line coming into Thomaston, Georgia. So for Mattie Lou Pollard coming home. Now, you know, that's remarkable right there. When you can, I don't know how many cars it would take to do that, but thousands. But a 13-year-old girl. Now, I've told enough lies. I know some of y'all have got an interesting story. Please, somebody tell me a good story that you know about something in Upson County. Yes, Alvin?
Wesley, your dad has some competition there in Vega, Mr. Trent Taylor.
Yeah, the barber?
Yeah, I get one haircut there 1 week and your dad the next month. Both charged a quarter, so it was.
But it was a little farther from you to walk from Vega Road over to our road, so it cost you more actually than you to get a ticket.
Wesley,
Sonny, I know you got one.
Wesley,
Yes, sir.
my dad was born in 1918. He told me the first barbershop haircut that he got, he walked to your dad's house. Your dad gave him a haircut and charged him a dime. And that tells me that you've come a long way.
I hate it, but people remind me that I am a real contributor to all of this inflation. because when I started, and George Gill gave me 2 quarters in 55, he gave me 2 quarters in 48, and now I take a $20 bill and smile. Yes, sir, Tom.
George not been your first customer, but I was your first customer when I moved to Thomaston. You gave me my first haircut here.
Yes, 1967. Greenway,
61.
Robinson,
61.
County.
Yeah. A long time ago.
Well, it's been a good trip, though, hasn't it? You've enjoyed being in Thomaston.
Pardon?
You've enjoyed being in Thomaston, haven't
I tell people I got here as quick as I could.
you? Yeah.
Wes,
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about the shoe shine boy business that
Oh.
used to be a barber shop?
Yeah, we had one at the hotel, and I guess to just put it into a scenario would be the best way. All barber shops years ago had 2 chairs sitting in the corner of the shop, elevated up about 2.5 to 3 feet, and the boot black would shine the shoes. Well, at the hotel, we had a real good shine boy there, and the hotel brought him a lot of businessmen staying overnight at the hotel. But one Saturday morning, I won't ever forget it. Do any of y'all remember Lamar Moore? Lamar Moore was a surveyor, and he was red-headed, and he could look at you so mean, he'd make you wonder if he was going to kill you, But anyway, he was in the chair, and Ms. Green, the English teacher, came in. She came in every Saturday morning and got a pair of green and white, red and white, blue and white pumps, shine. But she only got one color a week, but she came just as consistency as Saturday comes, she come and got those shoes shine. And so I was cutting Lamar's hair, and they were talking back and forth, and the shoe shine boy was working, and he had the white shoe polish out, liquid, and he had the green out, and he was working. And she said, Lamar, are you having any problem with English at Auburn? And he was always a smart aleck. He said, well, yeah, I sure am, Miss Green. I just can't make it. And I don't know. The next thing I knew, there was shoe polish all over the floor of the shop, green and white. And there was a finger about 2 inches from Lamar Moore's nose. She says, no, you are not. You took English from me. That was the quietest I've ever seen Lamar Moore. He didn't have a thing to say. I tell you right now, he was so gotten off with. But Miss Green, she was a lady. I liked her. She was a sweet lady. But that was big business, and now if you go to the airport, they banned them at the airport, hadn't the shoe shine boys?
Yeah, that's not there.
They used to get about, they haven't, Lynn?
No, they were there last week.
Yeah, they get about $15 to shine your shoes. 3 shoe shines will buy you a pair of shoes now. And,
The bus station,
Yeah.
Greyhound.
Greyhound bus station, yeah, they used to have a line of them there, didn't they? Yeah. We ought to have a story. Mr. Hammock, you from Macon down there, you wrote a book about Thomaston. I know you got a story to tell us. Tell us a story about Thomaston, about East Thomaston.
Are you talking to him?
Mr. Hammock.
It's talking to you.
Oh, well, I can tell you, like I told you before the meeting started, you cut my hair on the Barnesville Street when you had to put the little piece of wood up over the barber chair for me to sit on. You and Riley Montgomery cut my hair consistently back in those days, and my daddy's too.
Yeah, y'all lived there on the village. didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I cut Mr. Hammock. He has written a book about East Thomaston, and it's very good. I have a copy of it. He shared a copy of it with me. The draftsman copy, before you had it printed. But it was alarming to see all the hands raised of the people I've cut. When Gwen, we were at the lawyer's office one day, and Gwen happened to ask the lawyer, she said something to him, and he said, well, Miss Gwen, he said, I'm 36 years old, and says, nobody's never cut my hair but Wesley Brown. So it's not unusual. My customers are very loyal. There's Tom and Sandy Paget, and Tom moved down here from Atlanta, and he's been there every time he needs a haircut, and I appreciate it, Tom. Somebody's got a story
I got a
to
quick
tell.
story for you. One time, when I was playing midget football, we were gonna play in LaGrange that Saturday morning. Well, we were gonna play that night. It was our first game, and I remember Daddy bringing me into that East Thomaston facility, and I got a haircut there, and you telling me you were giving me a winning haircut. And then over there at the game, we won the game, and I saw you up in the bleachers. I remember hollering up at you that the winning haircut worked.
I tried to encourage you to work hard. Well, that's about all I have. I appreciate the opportunity. Yes, Alvin.
I have you remember my grandmother, she was Burnett. She had 3 brothers who were barbers.
Yes.
And I found out about 2 years ago that one of them had a daughter still living in Macon. So I went down there and talked to her. She said that her daddy, that was raised around Barnesville, said her daddy learned how to barber shearing mules.
Shearing mules. Well, some of my haircuts look like it.
Hey, Mr. Wexford, how many customers have you ever had that swept their own hair up when they got a haircut?
Yeah, I happen to have a customer here that's probably 30 years old. 25, and every time he's ever got a haircut at El Matador, he has swept the hair up. And I have to confess, the first time he swept it up, I was holding the top of the broom because I knew he was going to break the mirror. The bottles off of the back bar. But Pierce, Mr. Pierce over there, Jimmy Hardy's grandson, and Bill and Nan Thompson's son. It's been a wonderful year, but don't look at him now because he told me he's coming and getting a haircut in May. He plans his haircut.
Mentioned barbers at one time with bloodletters way back for Egyptian and later. That didn't end on up to I knew a great grandmother died from excessive bloodletting from a
Oh, really? Your great grandmother.
They use that means to remedy certain things.
Yeah, they used it more in my study for anemia, and that's the worst thing you could do for anemia is take the blood out of the body. But that's the stuff. Well, I appreciate it, and thank y'all very much.
Several things in closing. We do have some of these forums here. If you want to join the Historical Society, we'd love to have you. If you enjoyed this program, we have programs like this every month. This is a really good crowd. I like this, and we want to see it again. So don't forget, it's like the Uncle Sam, we want you. And here are our programs right here. Ms. Hightower, do you want to just briefly tell them about what next month's program is, in case they might be interested in coming?
Well, next month we have Kay Minshew coming from LaGrange, and she's been here before. She wrote a book on who was it? Roosevelt, and there's a copy of it up in the archives if anyone would like to see it. And she's coming this time. She's just completed a book on Jimmy Carter. And so she's coming to speak on that. So I hope we'll have a good crowd.
Yep. We always meet on the 4th Monday at 7 o'clock right here. So keep that in mind, but don't forget, if you want to join us, we have a membership application here. Finally, let's see, Mr. Brown, we want to present you with this shirt. You could wear that like cutting hair too. That look nice on you. Turn around, let's see how that looks on you. Look at that. Got our logo on it and everything. All right, and that's it, Joe. Anything else? That's it. Okay, well, thanks. Meansville, stick around a minute if you want to. The next meeting.